Check, check, 1, 2. And headphones. Oh yeah, that's sexy. I've been using Tone Balance Control for a while now to help my mixes translate from my studio monitors to other playback systems, and it's made my life a whole lot easier. So in this video, I thought I'd set myself a real challenge to mix a song using just headphones. How do people mix on headphones? This sounds awful. Then, using that same mix as a starting point, I'll use Tone Balance Control to make further changes and compare the results, putting them under the microscope in the ultimate test, the car playback test. I hate mixes in this car, but that all seemed a little easy. This is so bloody hard. So to ramp things up, I've given myself just 1 hour to complete my first mix with headphones, then a further 30 minutes using headphones and Tone Balance Control. No headphone, studio room simulations or headphone correction software. I'm completely on my own with just my musical sensibilities, this $100 pair of headphones, and later on, Tone Balance Control to try and figure out how my mixes will translate in the real world. So how will they turn out? You'll have to just stick around to find out. I wouldn't be surprised if this mix sucks. I wonder what this is going to sound like. I'm just going to turn off my monitors, and we are working purely on headphones. Yeah. Oh my God. How do people mix on headphones? This sounds awful. I've been away for so long. All right, I think I'm going to start with the drums. I have no sense of what things should sound like. My God, this is hard. This is so bloody hard. The bass is all over the place. I really cannot understand what's happening in this mix. I've been away for so long. I'm so tired of being alone. I just gotta get home. It's cold outside. People stop and stare. Ah! One of the joys of working on headphones is being blasted with noise and not having anywhere to run to. My ears are just like compressing, so I have no idea how much compression I've got going on here. It should be really interesting to see if it actually doesn't suck. All right, I've been mixing for about an hour now, and my ears are not liking this at all. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this mix sucks. It sounds okay in the headphones, but will it translate? We will see. Balance in mixing is sometimes a confusing concept to wrap our heads around. To properly explain balance and this idea of tonal balance, I have to take you back to something we all know pretty well, which is the playground. When we think of balance, we might think of a playground seesaw where the weight on each side perfectly balances the other. But that's not the case in music. The distribution of energy between the lows, low mids, high mids, and highs is of unequal weighting. So as long as these proportional balances are maintained, the music will sound both pleasant and balanced to our ears, even if that means having proportionally more low mids than, say, high frequency. All that matters is the proportional balance. If, for example, the lower frequencies were to become proportionally overpowering compared to the higher frequencies, then we'd perceive the music as dull, bass heavy, or both. The basic remedy to fix this is to have one of two things: either remove the excess lower frequencies, or to add an appropriate amount of higher frequencies to restore the relative balance. Obviously, adding both lower and higher frequencies to an already balanced mix does nothing to sway the balance in either direction. It's only when frequencies relate disproportionately that we end up with something that sounds unbalanced. Balance is therefore not reliant on any one area of the spectrum. It's how each of these relate to one another. This starts with the instrument balance on our faders and ends with adding or subtracting frequencies from each individual instrument to achieve the desired balance. Of course, mixing balance is always shifting because music, by its nature, is dynamic, which is why tonal balance control outlines a maximum and a minimum range that is considered typical of other full arrangements in the selected genre. With this in mind, let's get on with refining our mix balance using tonal balance control. For those not familiar with it, we've got a bunch of presets here. You could select any one of these that most relates to the style that you're mixing. I've chosen the R&B soul one. Bass heavy or modern would also get you there. There is the fine mode and there is the broad mode. So if we play the song, it will give me some feedback on, broadly speaking, where the issues are. What this is telling me is that on the crest factor, all this means, if you can think of it in these terms, the transient portion of the sound is more of a feature in the low end than that of the bass guitar. So if you can think of it as kick versus bass, we're kind of leaning more towards the kick. So we might want to think about putting it more into the center and trying to get those two a bit better balance. We're a little bit low on the low mids. We're quite high on the high mids. Even though we've got not enough low mids, it might just be that we've got too much of something else in one of these other bands. The bands are divided between 250, 2K, and 8K. One thing I could do is I could load a target curve. So I'm going to load in the mix that I just bounced. Okay. So what do we compare it to that? We need to put a lot more work in. This range here is pretty much what's considered typical in that specific genre. Anything outside of that is worthy of some sort of inspection. Just like any metering, you've got to be guided by your ears. I'm going to use it to guide me towards something that hopefully sounds a little bit better. So the first thing I want to look at is the relationship between the kick and the bass guitar, just so we can get that crest factor, and then we'll address these other frequency imbalances. So I also think in the chorus we've got a bit of edginess coming out in the high mids. So at the moment we're kind of looking more of a broad window. If we wanted to, we could drop it down to 3 seconds, which is more in line with our UFS type metering. And that will just give us more of an immediate view, which is more appropriate for mixing. 10 seconds is probably more appropriate for mastering. And if we went to something like real time, that's more like a real time analyzer, and infinite is more for mastering. So you can see certain trends over time. With that in mind, I'm going to play it again. The bass is not playing much of a prominent role there in the verse. Let's have a look at how we can address that. Let's set up a bus. Maybe we send the entire drums and the bass guitar. So we go stereo, just call it rear bus, send the bass there as well. Might compress these two together. Let's see what happens. Yeah. Okay, so here what I'm doing is I'm adjusting the compression on the bus, which has the bass guitar and the kick on it. And then what I've done is I've adjusted this side chain so that it lets through a little bit more of the bass, so that the actual bass frequencies don't affect the compression as much. And then I start adding some EQ to try and bolster some of that low end, which seems to be lacking in this particular section.
It's cold outside, people stop and stare. That's why I'm coming home to be by your side. Baby, take my hand, forget ups and downs. I'm so glad we're together again, so stay close to me.
Now it's a little bit difficult to figure out. A lot of space between the notes. So I'm thinking maybe I switch back to something more like 5 and see if that helps us out. By selecting 5 seconds, we get to more of a broad understanding of how the mix changes are affecting things. At the moment, I'm changing the guitar, and that should push some of the low mids up. And in fact, I'm boosting the low mids there. And that will hopefully help other areas balance out, a bit like our seesaw from earlier. The bass is dipping out, and that's pretty normal because it's not a section where it's the full arrangement. All of these curves here are based on full arrangements. You can't really rely on it everywhere in the song, but I'm pretty happy with that in terms of what's happening here with the crest factor, and the low end looks pretty good, and we're starting to feed more of that guitar back in and covering a lot more of those low mids, and that's helping this out a little bit, but I think we need to do just a little bit more. So we'll take a good look at that, and I think it's actually coming from the vocals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put neutron onto the vocal, put an equalizer on there, and one thing you can do from tone balance control, bring that back, is I can actually control that lead vocal EQ from here. So if I want to, from this window here,
I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming home to be by your side. I've been away for so long. I'm so tired of being alone. I just gotta get home. It's cold outside.
So that there seems to have tamed some of the high mids, which are obviously coming from the vocals. But there's also this low mid bump, which seems to only appear every time the vocal comes in. So I have to assume that it's coming from there. But now we're left with this low mid area, which is lacking. So the best place to find that now is to go into the organ and try and get some of that back. We've still got a few issues in the high mids, and I actually think that's coming from the organ. So we'll pull that out of the top end, and we're going to boost some of the low mids just to get some of that mid-range action. And because it's a sustained instrument, it's generally going to influence the overall tone more consistently. This version of Tonal Balance Control, which is version 1, in version 2 you can solo these bands.
It's cold outside, people stop and stare.
There's a bit of a high-end thing happening there, so I'm going to get onto that and just lower some of this air.
Well, I'm coming home, baby. I'm coming home to be by your side.
So just with the high mids there, I might consider just compressing them a little bit more in the overheads. And I think we're pretty good. Changes that we've made are positive, I think. I haven't ridden any levels yet. There's no automation, so it could be refined even further. But from a tonal perspective, this is definitely a lot better than what it was. we're sitting really good right now. I don't have any issue with that at all. And that's on the 3-second setting. The shorter the time frame that you're looking at this stuff, the harder it is to try and get these problems under wraps. We got there really quickly. Let's go over to the car and see what it's going to actually sound like when it's on a different system. Right, so here we go. Moment of truth. Just firing up mix number 1. Let's get it nice and loud.
Yeah. Well, ooh, hey. Well, I'm coming home, baby. Come home to be by your side. I've been away for so long. I'm so tired of being alone. I just gotta get home. It's cold outside, people stare. That's why I'm coming home to be by your side. Baby, take my hand, forget ups and downs. I'm so glad we're together again, so stay close to me.
I'm really actually pleasantly surprised at how well that is translating. It's not perfect. It sounds pretty good. Let's have a listen to the tone balance control mix, those changes that we made.
I'm coming home, baby. Come home to be by your side. I've been away for so long.
So much better.
I'm so tired of being alone. I just gotta get home. It's cold outside, people stop and stare. That's why I'm coming home to be by your side. Baby, take my hand, forget ups and downs. I'm so glad we're together again, so stay close to me. Yeah, I'm coming home, baby. Watch out!
That feels so much better. It doesn't feel like a completely different mix, but it just feels like it's balanced. There's nothing that's really sticking out as being an issue. It all feels really musical. The metering on tone balance control, you know, where we saw high mids, they were coming out on the previous mix. So whatever we did to change that by, you know, adding in some of the lower mids from the guitar and the keys, man, that's made a huge difference. I can't believe I mix that on headphones, and I hate mixers in this car. Maybe I need to start mixing on headphones and working with tone balance control, because this just proves that you can take an unfamiliar environment, mix with your musical sensibilities to the best of your abilities, and then refine that using tone balance control. Huge difference, huge difference. They don't sound like, you know, they're worlds apart. It's the same mix, but it's just feels fuller, more balanced. Yeah, wow, what a difference. So what's your unfamiliar environment? Is it the room that you're working in? Is it a set of headphones? Is it a second set of studio monitors? Why don't you try this challenge and see for yourself if tonal balance control can make as big a difference for your mixes. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Happy mixing.